Hey everybody, I'm going to be doing another drawing tutorial today, and this one is actually going to be in colors, so it'll be a little different from the rest of my videos. Today what I'm going to be drawing is a close-up of a gecko eye. So I'm going to try and make it look as realistic as I can just with a couple of colors, and if you want to follow along with me, that's great, or if you just want to watch the video for fun, that's also great. So the colors that I'm going to be using today are going to be a brown. So if you need to pause this video to get these colors, you can totally do that. I'm not sure how well that these show up on the screen right now. Like, to me, this looks black, but this is a brown. And then I have a green. I have a yellow. I have a light blue, but you can also just use a dark blue and then color lightly. And I have a light green. Now, if you don't have a light green, that's okay. You can always make a light green with yellow and green, but it's best if you do have a light green. But I will discuss how to make a lighter green with yellow and green that we have. And those are basic colors, so hopefully you have those. So now that you have those colors, and I'll just put them in front of the screen one more time: brown, green, light blue, yellow. Now that you have the colors down, I'm going to start drawing this. So since I'm drawing a gecko eye, it's going to look very reptilian, and I'm going to draw a bunch of scales around it as well. So you will start by drawing kind of an oval shape, just like that. And then I'm also going to draw the pupil on the inside. And the pupil of this guy is going to be kind of like a cat pupil. And then the other thing that I'm going to go ahead and draw is going to be a little kind of a square shape that'll go right there. And then I'm going to draw another kind of a square shape right up in here. And these two shapes are what you would call the glint. Those are the part of the eye that has no color because it looks like the light is shining off of the eye because eyes are shiny. So now that I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer the scales around the eye. And I'm just going to move my camera a little bit like that. There we go. The scales are relatively large in relation to the eye. That makes them a lot easier to draw. So I'm just going to start layering these on. These are not circles. They're kind of like almost squares that have rounded edges. You can see I'm just layering them right next to each other all around the eye. So now I have a whole bunch of scales around the eye. Then I'm going to do my second layer, and that's just going to be more of those. You can tell none of these are really the same shape. I'm kind of just filling in spaces that look like they need more detail because I'm not following the picture that I'm using exactly. I just want to make sure it looks pretty much like a reptile. The main idea of this video is not just to teach you how to draw a reptile eye or an animal eye in general. It is to teach you how to use colored pencils. And you might see these kind of little triangle shapes or diamond shapes popping up in between these scales. You can add another scale in there if you want, or you can just color that in dark when we get to that point later. It looks kind of like there's a little world that's surrounded by flower petals at this point to me. And I think that's all I'm gonna do for scales because I don't really want too many more than that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna zoom in on my space so that it kind of fills up the whole paper. There we go. So I have about 1, 2, 3 rows of scales. And I'm just gonna go ahead and fill in a couple more up here just so that it fills up that little triangle of space up there. And now you can see I'm kind of just doing them random so that they fill up the space. And that's fine if you want to do that. All right, that's all filled in. And then I have this little space right here. And that's filled in. I'm going to do this little corner up here. Just like that. And then I'll just fill in this little corner. All right, so now you can see I have this totally perfectly filled in. And if you want to do less scales, that's okay, but I would suggest having at least 1, 2, and maybe a third row, just for details. And this drawing that I have right now is only about, I would say, 6 inches by like 5 inches tall. So it's not very big. I would not suggest doing this tutorial on a huge sheet of paper. If you've already started doing it on a huge sheet of paper, I would suggest just cutting it down so that this is a little bit more on the manageable side. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start just shading in a bunch of these scales. And to do that, I'm going to go in with this light green on half, and then I'm going to show you how to make light green on the other half. So I'm just going to shade them in. So you can see for half of those scales, I just shaded them in with the light green color. Now, if you don't have light green, then what you're going to do is you're going to color your scales totally yellow. So I'm going to do that on the other side. So now that I have half of those in green and half of them in yellow, to make the half that's yellow a lighter green, I layer the yellow first and then I layer on green. But what I'm doing is I'm just coloring it really, really lightly. And that's going to make those a light green, kind of a light yellowish green. Okay, so now you can see they're all about the same color. They're definitely different, but that's the best way that I can show you to make a light green with green and yellow, just in case you don't have that light green color. Now, the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in around those scales and I'm just gonna color, I'm gonna make like an L shape on the bottom of the scales, like this, an L shape or like the crescent moon shape. And I'm gonna do it along the bottom of the scales, just like this. And what I'm doing is I'm outlining where I'm gonna make a darker shade of green. Alrighty. Now that I have that crescent moon green shape on all of them, I'm gonna shade it in. And that's just with my regular green shade of pencil. It's not with black or anything. I'm not sure exactly what color it looks like in the camera. And you can see in some of these scales, it's more of a U shape. Like right here, it's more of a U shape rather than an L shape. And that's just because I did it all along the bottom rather than just on the side. You can kind of vary how you're layering in that darker color if you would like, and it will make it look a little bit more interesting. And then I would go in and I would color in all of these spaces like really dark green. And I'm actually going to outline, I think, my eyeball so that it's really, really dark green all around it, because there would be a kind of a shadow all around that eyeball anyway, where the scales meet the eye. And you can see not all of my coloring is super perfect. The reason for that is that I am drawing up against a wall, so it makes it a little bit hard for me to color. I apologize for that. I know it's not the neatest drawing, but it should show you how to do this. Now, you can leave your scales like this, or if you would like to learn how to blend better, take your yellow and go over the line that is between the green, the dark green, and the light green. If you take your yellow and go over that line, what it's going to do is it's going to help to blend that green with the yellow. Or it should. Whenever you have two colors that are dark and light, the best way to blend them together is to take the lighter color and just to color along the line that you see between the dark and the light color. That's a colored pencil trick. Alrighty, that looks pretty good. And I'm actually gonna break up this line that I have down here as well. That yellow is really good for breaking that up, just so that it looks a little bit smoother between the dark green and the lighter green. So now you can see it's starting to look more and more shaded. And for those of you who are really looking to learn how to shade, you can actually do this process again, where you add dark green, but like really gently, just like that. I'm really not pressing hard with this pencil. I'm barely pressing at all. And then I'm gonna go back over it with the yellow again. This is not necessary. This is just if you're trying to learn how to use colored pencils to make more realistic drawings. So now that's a little bit more shaded right there. The next thing I'm gonna do to make this lizard's eye is I'm gonna color the entire eye yellow. Except in this white spot, and this one. And I'm coloring pretty hard with these guys. You do have to color relatively hard with the colored pencils to get them to blend. And coloring hard is called burnishing. That's where you can't see any of the little white specks that you can see if you color really light. So now I have that totally yellow. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my brown color. And with that brown color, I am gonna start shading like, I'm gonna shade from here all the way around to here, kind of like in an arc or in a half moon shape. And I'm just gonna start shading right there. And now I'm actually coloring very gentle. Because if you color really dark with that brown, it's gonna be like way too much brown on the yellow. But you can see I'm just doing that brown all along the top of this eye. And I'm doing it a little bit harder at the edges. Harder at the edges, gentle as you move in the eye. That's what's gonna make it look more realistic because it makes it look like it's round. And I'm really, really gently coloring now. That's what's making it so light. Now, if you do end up coloring a little bit too dark on these, especially like right here or right here, you can take an eraser from a pencil and you can erase the brown. And what's gonna happen is it's just gonna take off a little bit of the brown, but it should take off enough that it's lighter than it was. So now you can see it's a lot lighter right there than it was a minute ago. And then I can go back over it with yellow. You can always use a regular pencil eraser on colored pencils. It's just not necessarily gonna work the best. So actually this is another blending technique that you can use. So like for these scales down here where I have these lines that are a little too defined, I'm gonna use my pencil eraser and see if I can't get a little bit of that line off. It didn't take off a huge amount of the line, but I can go back and just reshade it with yellow. And then that should blend all those colors better than they were before, so that it looks a little bit more on the realistic side and not so much like you just have a line. And again, this is not mandatory. This is just if you want to learn how to use your colored pencils better. And I think I'm going to use my eraser down here too. And then I'll go back over it with yellow. There we go. And I think that looks better down there. Now, in the eye, going back that direction, my brown doesn't exactly look like it's blending with the yellow. That's actually okay, but I am gonna go back in with the yellow and I'm gonna go over my brown. And what that should start to do is it should start to blend my yellow and my brown together a little bit better so that they don't look quite so much like it's just colored pencil on colored pencil. This should make it look a little bit more smooth in the end. All right, I would say that looks pretty good. Now, there's a lot more brown actually in this gecko's eye than I have already done. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue adding it. In my gecko picture that I have, he's got these really, really dark brown lines that both come towards the center pupil part. So I'm just gonna gently use my brown and come towards the pupil. And then I'm gonna go to the other side. And I'm gonna very gently just go towards the pupil. Just like that. And then I'm just gonna bring this brown down a little bit more on this side. And you can tell I'm making it really dark over here, just in the corner of the eye. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Just like that. And then I'm gonna use my yellow just to go in and blend that together. So I'm just going over that color with the yellow again. And I would say that looks pretty good. Now, I actually forgot to mention one color that you will need. So if you need to go get that, go ahead and pause this video. And that color is going to be black, and that's just for the pupil. So I'm just coloring this pupil black. So I would say that's looking pretty good so far. Now, the rest of this drawing is really going to be doing details and filling in the other scales that you have. So I'm not going to do all of the scales for this video, but I am going to do a couple more details just to help y'all to learn how to use these colored pencils and help you to learn how I would do this drawing if I was doing it. So another thing that you might like to do between these scales, rather than putting the green in here, is actually putting in brown. The brown will make it look more like there's a shadow in between all of your scales. So I'm going to start adding brown in between some of these just to see how it looks. And that's definitely making them pop out a little bit more. Alrighty, and then there's that. And I'm going to do a little bit more brown down here, just along the bottom of the eye. And just along right here. So I think the brown makes that look way better, just like those scales are really popping forward. So I think that's probably better than if you just add the dark green everywhere, but you'll have to choose which one you like better. If you like the dark green between the scales, definitely do that instead. Now I'm just gonna do one more row of scales, and I'm gonna just use my light green because that is a little bit easier for me. And again, I'm pressing hard enough that you can't really see any white specks on here. You are going to need to color pretty hard to make sure these colors are going to mix together. Unless I told you in the video not to color hard. And my gecko actually, the picture that I have, has a little bit of blue on the scales. So for a couple of these, I'm just going to mix in a little bit of blue. So I'd say a little bit of blue right there would look cool. And then on the real picture, this one is actually all blue. And so is this one. It's almost like he's got some stripes around his eye. I'll do these ones over here blue too. And then I'm just going to continue using my lighter green to finish up these scales. All right, so now those are all filled in. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding that darker green in that U shape in the scales. And then I'm going to do it here as well. All righty. Now all of those scales have their dark green shading on the bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead in and I'm just going to do the dark green in between the scales, and I'm actually going to put the brown over the top of the dark green because a little bit of that dark green shows through the brown and it looks really cool. Again, if you just want to put dark green in between the scales, just do dark green. Or if you just want to do brown, just do brown. Again, everything that I do is to help you. So if you decide something else looks better for your drawing, go with that. Art is about finding what works for you. I'm gonna make this one dark. And there we go. Then I'm just gonna add in my dark brown. Alrighty. And then the process for the rest of these scales and going all around this is exactly the same as that. So you're just gonna need to fill in the scales with that light green first, or with yellow and then the dark green. And then you add the dark green little shadows on the bottom of the scales to make them look round. And then after that, you start adding either dark green in between the scales or brown, or you add both dark green and brown. And then once you layer all those colors together and fill in all of this, it's gonna look really cool and really realistic. I hope this video was useful, and thank you for following along.